go on Discord quite a bit, just checking out the different chats, right, and the different servers and whatnot. And on Discord, I often come across conversations where guys are talking about IQ, as if IQ was the most important thing in the world. And I'm like, dude, man, come on. It's understandable. It's a function of immaturity, quite frankly. See, when you're young, as I was once young. Yeah, believe it or not. And when I was young, as most young guys who are smart, well, I used to think that being smart, having a lot of IQ points, was the most important thing. And that having a lot of IQ points determined whether you're going to be successful or not. And that, people who had few IQ points, well, they weren't going to amount to much. And me, I have a lot of IQ points, so I'm going to be a big star someday, right? And see, I realized retrospectively that a lot of very, very smart young guys who don't have a lot of other qualities going for them because they're young, they're just starting out, right? They don't have a lot of status or any status at all, but they have a lot of brains. They tend to fixate on IQ points, and they think to themselves that it's the most important thing in the world, and that the number of IQ points that you have, it determines success or failure in life. And I'm here to tell you that that is simply not true. It's understandable why young guys would fixate on IQ. Because, like I said, you're a young guy, you don't have any status, you don't have any resources, right? You barely have a car, perhaps, but you got a lot of brains. And a lot of times, precisely because you have a lot of brains, it socially isolates you. Because, especially in the Western democracies, they don't know how to handle young guys with a lot of brains. And a lot of times in a lot of public school systems and whatnot, they don't have like a separate category for the real brainiacs. And so the guys who are really smart feel very alienated and isolated. And they realize that they're a lot smarter than their peers, but they don't know what to do with their brains. But they look around to the society and realize that smart guys tend to do a lot better. And so they get comfort from that fact. And that comfort, soothes them through that very lonely period of adolescence where you're the smartest guy in the room and nobody wants to talk to you. And it happens to everybody. But what happens is that, young guys will start to fixate on the IQ issue and think to themselves that IQ is the be-all, end-all. And it's not. You'll discover that there are other qualities that are, in fact, even more important than IQ points. Off the top of my head, I can tell you that consistency, perseverance is far more important than IQ. Woody Allen had a saying, 90% of life is showing up. He was dead right. See, a lot of times you will find that very, very smart guys, they don't amount to much because they didn't have consistency. That ability to be there, to show up. They didn't show up. They'd blow it off. They didn't have that discipline. And a lot of times, guys who are not that smart, but very disciplined, they accomplish much more. Because people in the society realize that that very consistent guy, maybe he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he's always going to be there. And they come to depend on him. And see, in any society, that member, that figure who is depended upon gets rewarded usually. And so a lot of times, the smart guy who is mercurial, who sometimes shows up and does a brilliant job and other times just doesn't bother and is sleeping or playing video games and just blows off whatever, he doesn't amount to much. But that guy, that tortoise, who is relentless and always there, he wins. And there are other qualities too, by the way, okay? In psychology, there are the big five qualities called OCEAN: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These five psychological traits, they're called the big five because they're generally acknowledged to be accurate. See, different people have different amounts of them. And these five qualities that have nothing to do with IQ points often as not will predict success. Conscientiousness, what I described before as sticking with it, as being consistent. Well, conscientiousness is incredibly important, but so is being extroverted. Extroverted in the sense of being able to deal with other people. See, introverts tend to be not so successful as extroverts. See, to a degree that's fairly shocking. Those who are neurotic, in certain circumstances, they become very successful. In other circumstances, they become failures. And so it's important to understand that IQ is not it. It's not the only quality that will assure your success. Another quality that I think that contemporary psychology doesn't study enough, it seems to me, is impulse control. See, you've probably been insulted by some bully or some figure or whatever, or disrespected one way or the other, by whomever. I certainly have, in different circumstances, different times of my life. Sure, we all have. And see, those who have high impulse control will realize that if somebody disrespects you, there are certain circumstances where it would be detrimental for you to react to that disrespect. And that unfortunately you're just going to have to eat crow and just suck it up. I mean, like an obvious example, if you're interacting with some cop, right, and he disrespects you in some way, whether intentional or not, that's irrelevant, right? You're interacting with that cop and he disrespects you, what do? Well, if you have impulse control, you suck it up. You're not going to like it. You're going to be really pissed off. And it could be that the cop is an asshole and just a complete dickhead. And because he's a cop, because he has a badge, because he has this power that is unearned but assigned to him, he treats you like shit. But if you have impulse control, what do? You suck it up and you wait. You wait for your lawyer. You wait for authority figures, other people, so that you can say, hey, this cop is a fucking dickhead to me and I don't want to stand for it and I want to press charges or file a complaint or whatever the fuck, right? But in the moment, you have that impulse control. And impulse control is like in a whole host of other factors too. I mean, like for instance, you go to McDonald's and instead of ordering 5 cheeseburgers because you're fucking starving, you realize you're going to only have 1. Because if you order 5, you keep on in that train and you're going to wind up like a blimp, right? And so you see what I'm saying? Impulse control is so much more important than IQ in so many ways. You see the point I'm trying to make, Impulse control, the 5 qualities of Ocean, all of these different traits are just as important to success and future happiness as IQ. Now, the issue has to become, why are you fixating on IQ? Why are you saying that IQ is the be-all, end-all? Well, like I said before, it's because it's probably the only thing you've got going for you. Yeah. You're feeling isolated and lonely, and you feel that you are disrespected, you're not taken into account because you're a young guy. You're 19, 20, 25, maybe even 30. You haven't accomplished much. You've got all these brains. You've got all this information in your head. You're very educated. Educated formally and self-educated. You know so much. So much information, so many things, and you have so many insights. You're a brainiac, right? And you want more respect. You want to be taken more seriously. But you aren't. And so you sort of like start thinking to yourself that IQ is the only thing that matters, and those who don't have IQ should not be respected. And it's like a soothing kind of thing that you do with your head. You see? I know about this because I used to do it. Yeah. When I was like 16, 19, when I didn't have anything going for me, I used to comfort myself with the fact that I was the smartest guy in the room, which I was. But I didn't have all these other important qualities, and more importantly, I wasn't trying to systematically develop them. And that was my mistake. You got all these IQ points, right? Okay, then use them. Use them to develop these other qualities that I've mentioned. Self-control, discipline, conscientiousness, extroversion. You're a brainiac. You got a lot of brains, but you're introverted. And you know that introverted people are not so successful as extroverted people. So use your fucking brains to develop your extroversion because you're going to need it. See? In business meetings, and any kind of business interaction, the guy who's more extroverted, who's got a stronger personality and shows it and comes across as the stronger personality, he's going to be the more successful guy. So if you have all these fucking brains, then use them to fucking develop your extroversion. Take classes in public speaking or whatnot. There are lots of ways to develop those tools, those necessary tools that you will need for success. If you've got so many fucking brain points, then use them. There's nothing more pathetic than a 40, 50-year-old guy who's a fucking genius. I mean, like 170 IQ points and shit, right? And he's amounted to nothing. You know, it happens all the time, by the way. It happens all the fucking time. You'd be surprised. Guys with 150, 160, 170 IQ points, real fucking brainiacs. I'm talking